Welcome to today's video. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I thought it'd be fun to come up here and film my entire makeup start to finish and just drop like all of the tips and tricks I have for you for every stage of makeup. But then I realized that's gonna be like a 40-minute video, and it's gonna be really hard for you to reference later if you are doing your foundation and you just need foundation tips and you don't have time to sit and watch a 40-minute video to try and find that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a full face, but I'm going to break this up into several videos, concentrating first on foundation and skin, then on eyes, then on lips, then on blush and bronzer. I might do a separate one for concealer, or I might roll that into foundation depending on how long these get. But I'm going to have several videos for you that really kind of work its way through an entire makeup application. And my goal is to drop every bit of tips and tricks that I know with you guys, share with you how I do my makeup and the little things that I do to achieve the results that I achieve with my makeup, and just have them organized in individual little digestible videos. So that is my hope. I also hope to upload these back to back to back. So again, I'm not sure if it's going to be 4 videos or 6 videos, but I would like to, because I've never done this and I think it'd be fun to upload, consecutive days so that you're not having to wait too long for the next one. And it'd be just a fun little series that I do. So if you're not subscribed and that sounds like something you don't want to miss out on, make sure you subscribe. If you think this is ridiculous and you don't enjoy listening to me or watching me, then definitely don't subscribe. Let's go ahead and get started. We are going to start with foundation. Now, because I want these to stay very educational and focused, I'm going to try not to be too chatty in these, you guys. You know I'm chatty, but I'm going to try. Every time I do an educational video like these, I really try to keep the information and the content direct, to the point, concise. So that's what we're going to do. So I've only prepped my skin with moisturizer. I have absolutely no primer on my skin. However, I am going to go in and prime, because I do really notice a difference, especially at the age that I'm at. I'm 36, so I'm kind of in that middle of the, I've started to notice the signs of aging over the last couple of years, and I noticed that it's just progressing a little bit faster than it ever has before. So I do think a primer really helps my foundation application. It does a couple of things if you find the right primer. One, it's going to allow you to use less foundation, which is so important, right? Especially if you have any texture in the skin. The more product that you have on the skin, the more magnified any texture that you have, whether that's scars from acne, whether it's pores, whether it's fine lines, whether it's deep set wrinkles. Texture encompasses all of that. And when we have a ton of makeup on, it accentuates that. So we don't want to have a ton of makeup on, but I want full coverage. I want my blemishes to be covered. I want my skin to look flawless. So today I'm using the Strivectin Anti-Wrinkle Line Blur Perfector. I've been using this for a couple of weeks off and on. Another one of my favorites is the Hourglass Mineral Veil Primer. Now, my absolute favorite full coverage foundation is the Peach Perfect Too Faced Foundation. I love this because it's long wearing, it covers exceptionally well, and it does not look heavy. However, I have found that this is normally my go-to foundation for like events or, when I want to be really done up. But I also like to wear it on the days that I don't necessarily want to look all done up. So the way that I kind of dilute that down a little bit is I add a little bit of the MAC Face and Body Foundation. Now, I'm going to show you exactly how much I add. So this is about how much I've added of the Too Faced. And I'm going to go in and add, I don't know, maybe half of that. Do you see the face and body right there? It's kind of falling down the center. So that's about the ratio that I use. I am likely not going to use all of this foundation. I usually end up leaving a little bit, which is a tip. Don't feel like you have to use everything that you dispense on your hand just because you did. Just let it go to waste. Okay, now I'm going to use the IT Cosmetics foundation brush. I really like this foundation brush a lot because it's nice and dense, but it's curved, so it really does help you get in the contours of your face. And it's dense enough, but it's also soft enough to where you can blend. Sometimes brushes that are so dense, you can't really blend or like work that product into your skin. I almost feel like you're just kind of moving it around your face. So I'm gonna go in, and I always start in the center of my face because, now this isn't the case for everyone obviously, but most of us have the most discoloration, blemishes, sunspots, because that's where the sun hits our face, in the center of our face. Redness, that's typically where we need the most coverage. I know that's not the case for everybody, but having done makeup for 15 years, I find that that's typical. So I always start in the center there, because the first place that you put your brush or your sponge or whatever tool you're using, your fingers, that's where you're going to apply the most product. Makes sense, right? You go from your hand to the skin and you apply all that product there. And then the rest is just kind of blending it out. So you don't want to put that where you don't need the most coverage, right? If I don't need much coverage here, I don't want to go in and start there, because what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to have too much product in the area that I don't need it and not enough in the areas that I do. So I like to just press, press, press with this brush. It really is so easy because it gives the coverage, but it also blends it out at the same time. And then when I get to the perimeter of the face and the jawline, I will just kind of blend it down to my neck. I love the consistency that these two foundations deliver together. It is just perfection in my book. Perfection. It's matte, but it's natural matte. It doesn't look dry. It doesn't look flat. It doesn't look heavy. Okay, so then I'm going to go over to the other side and I'm going to do the same thing. So this is a technique for getting the most coverage, is just pressing your brush down to kind of do most of the work. I usually do this until I'm about like 80% there, and then I'll go in and then I will work in little circles and buff it into the skin. But if I just start kind of doing this motion, that's certainly a way to blend out the product. It's just going to shear the product out. So it's a great technique if you are trying to shear out a foundation, but if you're trying to get the most coverage from it, pressing like this, almost like a sponge, is going to deliver that payoff that you're looking for. Now, what I love about this combination of mixing the two, I'm actually going in with a little bit more, is that you really can customize it. Sometimes I put too much of the face and body and the face looks a little shinier than I want. Sometimes I put not enough. So you really can customize and get the exact finish and coverage that you want by mixing the face and body into, and it doesn't have to be the Peach Perfect. You can really use any long wear foundation that you like. Now, some people ask, do you like to use a brush or do you prefer a sponge? And it's a hard question for me to answer because I really like both tools. I find myself using the sponge when I have a very thick or heavy consistency of a product. I like it for concealer. I like it for really thick cream foundations or just really, really full coverage foundations, because the sponge is going to give you, it's really going to work the product into the skin, press it into the skin, but it's also going to give you a more natural finish. You're also going to use more product. So if you don't need it for a liquid foundation, if you're able to achieve the results you like with a brush, then I say stay with the brush because you'll use less product. Now, I just want to give you guys one more tip. I don't feel like I need to do this now because I like the finish of everything, but if you ever apply too much foundation and you're looking in the mirror and you're like, gosh, this looks like too much, or this is magnifying my pores, or it's just too heavy, take a damp beauty blender and just go in after you've applied the foundation and press it on the face. Don't add any foundation to this, just a damp, clean beauty blender, and just kind of bounce it on the skin. That is going to do a couple of things. One, it's gonna really press it into the skin, so anything that's laying on the top looking heavy, it'll help blend it in, but it's also gonna absorb any excess product. So if you've just got too much makeup on, this is a great way to remove that without messing up the makeup. Now, before I set anything with powder, I like to do my concealer. So I'm gonna give you guys a couple of my concealer tips and tricks. So one question I get a lot is about concealer. How do you cover dark circles? My concealer looks too heavy and cakey, too dry, it creases. I feel like concealer is very challenging because there's a few reasons why actually. One, because we have a different coloration underneath the eyes than we do on our face. Right here is a darker tint than on my cheek, right? It's a darker color, it's harder to cover. Two, the area underneath our eye, that skin, is the thinnest on our face, and it also tends to be the driest on our face. And it also tends to be where we start to show signs of aging before anywhere else. So we are dealing with fine lines and texture and wrinkles. We are dealing with dry skin. We are dealing with thin skin. There's all these host of things that contribute to like giving us a good challenge. So I'm gonna share with you guys my concealer tips and tricks, and hopefully they will help. So when you're trying to cover really dark circles, now I don't really think that I have like extremely dark circles. I feel like I have pretty average darkness under the eyes, but there are those of us out there who inherit really dark under eyes, and it's really nothing you can do. It's not like you're not sleeping well or taking care of yourself. It's kind of hereditary. So in those cases, I really recommend using a color corrector before you apply your concealer. I think concealers we often get wrong because we see a dark area and we want it to be brighter and lighter, so we grab a full coverage concealer that is 4 shades lighter than our skin tone and we apply it there because we want that area to be bright. But it's just not natural looking. And also it's likely not even enough coverage to really cover that darkness. And now what you've done is you've put a white cast over that is going to create a grayish tint through it. I think the best explanation, and I've said this several times, so I apologize if this is like the 5th time you've heard this, but I compare it to having a dark bruise on your leg and wearing light sheer pantyhose or white sheer pantyhose. You think you're covering it, but you're not fooling anybody. You know, people can still see that gray tone coming through. So that's the problem with going in with like one product. Unfortunately, you really do need to approach this in a 2-step process. So I always recommend a color corrector. One of my favorites is the Color Science Total Eye 3-in-1. This can double as a concealer, a color corrector, and it's also an eye treatment because it has skin loving ingredients in it. So when I want the extra coverage through the day, I will use this product first, and I will just kind of apply it under the eye. You can see that it has a peach tone to it. The reason peach is the typical color corrector that you're going to use is because peach cancels out blue, it cancels out purple. You look at a color wheel, peach is directly opposite of those colors on the color wheel, so it's going to neutralize those colors. Now I'm gonna go in with a beauty blender and just press this into the skin. I also like this product on the days that I just want a really natural concealer under the eye. When I don't want to have, maybe I'm not wearing foundation, but I do want to cover my dark circles. This is a nice product because it's not really a full coverage concealer or anything, but it will slightly brighten under the eyes. So as you can see what that does, right? I'm going to cover this eye. It doesn't completely conceal the darkness, but when you compare the two, obviously it's done something. It's brightened that area up. It has neutralized that dark purpleness to it. And I like the Beauty Blender because, again, this is going to really work it into the skin, but it's also going to absorb any excess. And if you notice, I'm really just pressing and bouncing this Beauty Blender. I'm not wiping, I'm not pressing hard. If you do that, you're really just kind of removing the product. So you just want to lightly bounce it. Next, you can go in with your concealer. Now, when I've done this step on myself personally, I don't feel the need to use a really heavy full coverage concealer. So I'm gonna use the Cover FX Power Play Concealer. I really like this one because it does offer a decent coverage, but it's not as full coverage as like the Tarte Shape Tape. It's also not as drying as that. So I'm gonna use this, and I'm just going to apply this. I really like to start right here in the inner corner, because that's where I have the most discoloration. I think that's where most of us have the darkness. It always starts right there. We also get like this little green tint over here in the inner corner, so I like to conceal there too. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the older I get, slapping this all over the face and creating triangles really doesn't do me any favors. It might look great on camera when you see YouTubers do it. It might look great on Instagram, but in real life, I do it and I'm like, I don't think so. So I really like to concentrate that in the inner corner. Now you can use a beauty blender for this. I will show you how to do that. Again, you just use the tip of it and you just like work it into the inner corner and bounce it just like so. And I also like kind of take it up here on the lid too, because we sometimes have some discoloration, either pinkness or redness or purple darkness on the lid. So I like to neutralize that. Another tool that I really, really love for this is the Sigma F79 brush. I love this because of the shape of it. It's essentially, this one's so dirty, I'm sorry you guys. It's essentially a beauty blender, but in a really fine, perfectly shaped brush head. You can see that it's contoured here, so it just fits perfectly under the eye. So I actually kind of prefer this tool for the concealer. I have not found a brush that compares to this. I really have not. It's so great for concealer. Now, the difference between the two, one is the shape, but also the Sigma is likely going to give you more coverage because the Beauty Blender is going to absorb a little bit more of that. And I do feel like that's the case. Like when I compare the two eyes, I feel like I have more coverage from this than I do on this. So again, it's not that this one's necessarily better, it's just better for certain results, right? You know, I think that's the key to understanding makeup is that makeup is so personal. I feel like it is so personal. The way that I do my eyes, someone else might think looks terrible, or what I think is maybe not complimentary to someone's eyes, someone else might love. And I've always told women that if they're like, oh, I wear my makeup like this, is that okay? I'm like, if you love it, yes, it's okay. So the last step that I do is I do set under my eyes with powder. Now I know some of you are probably going, oh my gosh, you put powder under your eyes. This is a step that I really feel like either works well for you or it works against you. The reason that I do this is to set my concealer to prevent any creasing. Now, total disclaimer, adding powder under the eye does make it look a little bit more dry. So if you have a really dry under eye or you have a lot of fine lines, this could magnify that texture. So if you're going to do that, there's a couple of suggestions I have. One is to look for the perfect powder. You want to find something that's really sheer and very light. You don't want to use a powder foundation. You don't want to use a powder that has any pigment or color to it. You really want to use something just sheer, light, translucent that'll just set that makeup without adding much more of a makeup look. I really like the Laura Mercier Secret Brightening Powder. This also has like really micro-fined, like not sparkle to it, not shimmer to it. It's just like the most light reflective highlight, I guess you could say. So what that does is it reflects light and creates like this luminosity that's so subtle that kind of combats that dryness, that magnifying texture effect, if that makes sense. I also really like the Bacon Blot Powders by Makeup Revolution. These are obviously going to be a lot less pricey. My tip for doing this is to use a really soft, light brush, something that's going to pick up very little product because you don't need a lot, and just lightly with the slightest pressure dust this under the eye. One thing I would always be told when I would do makeup is that I had really, really soft pressure. And I intentionally did that. My goal in having light pressure really is just to create little bitty layers of makeup. I wear a lot of makeup. I wear a lot of products, but I don't want to have the feel or the look of a lot of products. So I always approached makeup with very sheer little tiny layers. So I'm going to show you the difference, what I mean. So this brush you can tell is long, fluffy. It's going to pick up a light amount of product and apply it in a very, very light application versus something like, let's just go on the extreme here. Let's just say something like this. This is very, very dense. If I were to take this and pick up powder and put it on, it would make my face look like it was going to crack because it's picking up and applying too much product. You want something light, soft, and fluffy. Okay, and the last step I have for foundation and concealer, this video is getting a little longer than I wanted, is to set it with a very loose translucent powder. I like to find a powder that also minimizes pores, makes the skin look a little smoother. One of my favorites is the IT Cosmetics Bye Bye Pores, and I'm actually going to use the same brush that I used for the under eye. Now this is a little thicker than the Bacon Blot, that's why I don't use this all over the face. If you don't have an issue with texture or dryness under the eye, you certainly could, but I think for a lot of us, this might be too much to apply under the eye, so this purpose for me is really just to set the foundation. I'm not trying to add coverage here. I'm just trying to set everything so that when I go in with blush and bronzer, there's no patches that are tacky or sticky still from the foundation, and I don't have any issues blending out the additional product that I'm about to apply. All right, you guys, that wraps up the first segment of this series. We have tackled foundation, concealer, and setting powders. I'm going to move on and I'm going to film the next video, which is going to be blush, bronzer, and contour and highlighting. I think I can fit all of that into one video. If you have any questions about this particular step, leave it in the comment section below. All right, I'm going to go film the next part and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.